Welcome, dear readers, to a story that explores the darker side of ambition and greed, wrapped in the lives of two individuals with contrasting hearts. In this tale, honesty collides with cruelty, kindness is tested by deception, and in the end, we're left to ponder the lasting consequences of betrayal. Join us as we uncover the choices that shape destinies, for better or for worse. If you're drawn to stories that reveal raw human truths, be sure to follow and subscribe for more compelling tales. This story is written by Emily and narrated by Steve. Let's begin. In a quaint village, two families, the Williams and the Bakers, shared a long-standing friendship. Their children, Lily Williams and Thomas Baker, grew up together, surrounded by laughter and warmth. The union between Lily and Thomas was a wish whispered in both families for years, and finally, the engagement was made official. Thomas was the quintessential kind-hearted soul, adored by everyone in the village. However, his kindness made him naive, a trait Lily knew too well. On the other hand, Lily was beautiful and clever, yet secretly dissatisfied with her modest life. Her yearning for luxury grew silently, even as everyone celebrated the couple's engagement, hoping it would be the start of a harmonious marriage. Despite Thomas's sincere love, Lily's gaze was already looking beyond the village, seeking something greater than the simple life they could offer her. As the days passed, Lily's resentment toward her modest life deepened. To her, the engagement ring that Thomas had so proudly placed on her finger was nothing more than a shackle, tethering her to a life she did not want. Her dreams were filled with lavish halls, ornate dresses, and the gleam of jewels, things Thomas could never provide. Her heart yearned for wealth and prestige, and she believed she deserved more. One afternoon, as they walked along the river, Thomas spoke excitedly about their future. He painted a picture of a simple, happy life, filled with family gatherings, love, and a cozy little home. But Lily's thoughts drifted away as she grew more agitated with each word he spoke, her mind forming a plan to escape this future. By the time Thomas paused, glancing at her expectantly, she forced a smile and nodded along. Yet, beneath that smile, she had made up her mind. She needed to end this engagement. However, she wanted a way out that would not harm her reputation, a plan that would paint her as the victim. Then an idea came to her, wicked and calculated. She'd set the stage to make Thomas look like the villain. That evening, she set her plan into motion. She waited until Thomas was nearby, then, with a practiced fall, tumbled into the river, calling out for help. Thomas, true to his nature, leaped in without a second thought, pulling her to safety. As she lay shivering on the riverbank, surrounded by a crowd that had gathered, Lily did something shocking. She pulled Thomas close and whispered, "You will regret this." And before he could respond, she began to scream, accusing him of forcing himself on her when he pulled her from the water. The crowd's shock rippled through the air. Thomas stood stunned, his face a portrait of betrayal. He tried to defend himself, but Lily's tearful cries drowned out his voice. The villagers, unable to fathom such behavior from Lily, began to believe her story. In that moment, Thomas's reputation lay in shreds, his kindness and loyalty twisted against him. By the end of that night, Lily had achieved her goal. The engagement was broken, her hands washed clean of guilt in the eyes of the townsfolk. She knew the damage she'd inflicted, but she didn't care. She was free. With her engagement to Thomas dissolved, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, though a new and darker shadow hung over the village. The townsfolk murmured about Thomas whenever he passed by, casting him with suspicious and judgmental glances. The once beloved man, whose honesty and kindness had touched everyone, was now seen as a villain, a stranger among those he'd once called friends. Yet Thomas held his head high, refusing to show weakness, even as his heart crumbled under the weight of Lily's lies. Meanwhile, Lily wasted no time. She had achieved what she set out to do, but her ambition didn't stop there. She began to frequent the gatherings of the town's wealthy elite, using her beauty and charm to weave her way into their circles. With her quick wit and clever words, she captivated the attention of a wealthy merchant named Edward Gray. Edward, known for his vast wealth and sprawling estates, was charmed by Lily's beauty and grace. To him, she was the perfect vision of a refined woman, though he had little idea of the manipulation and greed lurking beneath her enchanting exterior. Lily saw Edward as her golden ticket, the man who would finally lift her into the life she craved. Their courtship was swift and passionate. Edward showered her with gifts, adorning her with the jewels and silks she had long coveted. She basked in the luxury, her every desire fulfilled. To everyone, she appeared to be the epitome of happiness, a woman who had risen above her modest origins. But beneath this perfect facade, Lily was never satisfied. She grew bolder in her demands, urging Edward to buy her more lavish gifts, to indulge her every whim. She skillfully masked her insatiable greed with flattery, drawing him deeper under her spell. Months later, Edward proposed, and the engagement was celebrated with grandeur. The townsfolk whispered in awe, marveling at her transformation from a simple village girl to the soon-to-be wife of a rich man. Lily relished every moment, feeling triumphant in her newfound status. Yet, despite her success, there was an emptiness within her that no amount of wealth could fill. She ignored it, choosing instead to lose herself in the glittering distractions of her new life. Meanwhile, Thomas had withdrawn from the village, his life shattered. He wandered aimlessly, unable to find peace or redemption, haunted by memories of the love and betrayal that had torn his world apart. Lily's marriage to Edward Grey was the talk of the town. Her life seemed perfect, a lavish mansion, exquisite dresses, and servants at her command. She had everything she had once dreamed of. But as months turned into years, the excitement began to wear thin. Beneath the jewels and silks, a gnawing dissatisfaction began to grow. Her new life brought many admirers, and Lily relished the attention. She grew reckless, indulging in flirtations with other wealthy men, each conquest more daring than the last. She craved the thrill of manipulation, the power of deception, both of which had become as addictive as the riches she had amassed. Edward, though initially blind to his wife's deceit, began to sense the change. Whispers reached him about Lily's indiscretions, and he confronted her one evening. But Lily, with her sharp wit and cunning charm, turned the confrontation into a masterful performance of tears and sweet reassurances, convincing him that it was all malicious gossip. Still, Edward couldn't shake his suspicions. Over time, he grew colder, and the once grand home they shared turned into a quiet battleground. Lily felt trapped once more, suffocated by the very riches she had once so desperately craved. Her frustration culminated in a lavish party hosted at their estate, where Lily sought solace in the attention of a young nobleman named Victor, who was known for his wealth and extravagant lifestyle. She laughed and flirted openly with him, disregarding the murmurs of the guests around her. As the evening drew on, Edward caught sight of Lily and Victor together, their intimacy undeniable. This time, there was no room for excuses. In a fit of fury, Edward publicly confronted her, his voice ringing out across the hall. "Is this how you repay the life I've given you, Lily?" he bellowed, his face a storm of anger and betrayal. The room fell silent, all eyes turned toward them. But Lily, instead of cowering, met his gaze defiantly. Her years of deceit and manipulation had hardened her, and she felt no remorse for what she had done. She looked around the room, feeling the judgmental stares of the guests, the whispers of scorn. In that moment, her facade shattered. The mask she had worn for so long crumbled before the crowd. But rather than feeling shame, she felt only a bitter resentment, a twisted sense of satisfaction at the chaos she had caused. Edward's voice echoed through the hall one final time, marking the end of their marriage. "I'll have nothing more to do with you, Lily. I'll see to it that you leave here with nothing, as you deserve." And with that, he turned and left, leaving Lily alone, stripped of her reputation, her wealth, and her marriage. For the first time in her life, Lily understood what it meant to be truly alone. She had sacrificed everything, love, friendship, honesty, in pursuit of her insatiable greed. And now, the very things she had scorned were the things she needed most. Lily returned to her childhood village after Edward cast her out, her name now tainted with scandal. Stripped of her wealth and the luxuries she had once paraded, she arrived with only a modest bag and a weary heart. Her grand dreams had been reduced to ashes, and the place she had once looked down upon was now her only refuge. The villagers' whispers were unforgiving. Many remembered her betrayal of Thomas and viewed her downfall as justice served. Wherever she went, she felt the weight of their scorn. The pride and charm she once wielded had dissolved, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. One evening, as Lily sat by the river where it all began, she thought back to Thomas. She remembered his kindness, the way he had looked at her with love and hope, and the innocent happiness they had once shared. a wave of regret washed over her, sharp and painful, as she wondered what might have been had she not let greed and ambition lead her astray. The days turned into weeks, and life grew increasingly difficult. She had little money, no allies, and her once beautiful face, hardened by years of deception, now looked haggard in the reflection of the river. Loneliness gnawed at her, a constant reminder of the life she had forsaken. Then, one day, she saw a familiar figure across the marketplace. Thomas. Time had changed him. His eyes, once bright with hope, now bore the shadows of hardship. Yet, there was a quiet resilience about him, a calm that seemed unshaken by the past. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved. Memories flashed between them, their childhood, the engagement, and the bitter betrayal that had severed their bond. Lily felt her heart tighten, a mixture of shame and sorrow flooding over her. She approached him, her voice soft and uncertain. "Thomas?" But before she could speak further, Thomas raised a hand, signaling her to stop. There was a sob. There was a sorrowful calm in his eyes, but also a strength that she hadn't seen before. "Lily, there was a time when I would have done anything for you. When I thought the world of you." He paused, searching her face for a moment before continuing. "But those days are long gone." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she took in his words, but she nodded, knowing they were true. She had destroyed the love they had shared, trading it for fleeting riches and false promises, and now she was left with nothing but the ruins of her choices. Thomas turned to leave, but before he walked away, he looked back one last time, his voice barely a whisper. "I hope you find peace, Lily. I truly do." As he disappeared into the crowd, Lily felt an emptiness that words couldn't describe. She had lost the only person who had ever truly cared for her, and in that moment, she understood the depth of her mistakes. In the end, Lily's beauty, wit, and charm had won her everything she wanted, but her cruelty and greed had taken it all away. Left with only memories and regrets, she wandered the village in silence, a shadow of the woman she once was. Life in the village was bleak for Lily, now an outcast, stripped of both her reputation and hope. Her once beautiful clothes became ragged, and her vibrant spirit faded. She scraped by with odd jobs, enduring the disdainful stares and whispered gossip of the townsfolk. Yet, amid the bleakness, she clung to a faint hope that things might still turn around, that she could somehow rebuild her life. But the scars of her choices lay heavy on her heart, and Lily often found herself haunted by memories of what she had done to Thomas. Each night, she was confronted by the faces of those she'd betrayed, their expressions of disbelief and hurt forever etched in her mind. She was a prisoner in a cage of her own making, her freedom stolen by her own decisions. One day, a stranger arrived in the village. Rumor had it he was a traveling merchant, and he possessed a certain wealth that reminded her painfully of Edward. Yet this man was different. He carried himself with a warmth and humility that Lily hadn't seen in years. His name was Jonathan, and despite her attempts to avoid him, their paths crossed. Jonathan, unaware of her past, treated her kindly, offering her small courtesies and gestures of goodwill. Lily, desperate for a sliver of connection, found herself drawn to him, though a gnawing guilt reminded her that she didn't deserve his kindness. She tried to keep her distance, but Jonathan's genuine warmth and interest slowly broke down her defenses. As they spent time together, Jonathan spoke of a life filled with simple joys, of traveling, meeting new people, and finding beauty in small things. His life was rich, not in money, but in experiences, in gratitude, and in the peace that came from living honestly. His words stirred something in Lily that she hadn't felt in years, a longing for a life that didn't hinge on wealth or manipulation. For the first time, she opened up, sharing fragments of her past, though she left out the darkest details. She told him about her dreams, her regrets, and the things she had lost. Jonathan listened patiently, his calm gaze unwavering, and his response was gentle yet thought-provoking. Life gives us many chances, Lily. Sometimes, we're blessed to be given the chance to make things right, but other times, we're left to make peace with what we've done. His words lingered in her mind, filling her with both sorrow and hope. She knew she couldn't undo the damage she had caused, but perhaps, just maybe, she could find a way to start anew. Over the next few months, Lily began to change. She no longer sought wealth or status, instead focusing on helping others in the village, quietly repairing the bridges she had once burned. Some people softened toward her, while others remained cold. But for the first time, she didn't mind. She found comfort in the simple acts of kindness she could offer, each small gesture a step toward healing. Jonathan eventually left the village, his journey calling him elsewhere. They parted as friends, and he left her with one final piece of advice. Remember, Lily, no cage is permanent. The door is open when you find the courage to walk through. As he disappeared down the road, Lily watched with a bittersweet smile, feeling a mixture of gratitude and sadness. His presence had opened her eyes to a life she had forgotten was possible, and his departure left her with a renewed sense of purpose. Now, with nothing but her determination, she was ready to take responsibility for her actions, to finally step out of the cage she had built. With Jonathan gone, Lily's life slowly found a sense of balance. She worked tirelessly, rebuilding her reputation among the villagers, and although many still eyed her with skepticism, she persevered. The days passed with a quiet rhythm, and her simple life brought her a peace she had never known in her wealthier days. But deep down, she knew there was one final person she needed to make amends with: Thomas. The thought of facing him filled her with dread, but she couldn't ignore the pain she had caused him. She had wronged him in the worst possible way, tearing apart his life for her own gain. Now, if she was ever to find true redemption, she had to confront her past and offer him an apology he truly deserved. One autumn afternoon, she gathered her courage and set off toward Thomas's home, a modest cottage nestled at the edge of the village. Her heart pounded with every step, and her palms grew damp as she rehearsed what she might say. Upon reaching his door, she hesitated, afraid of the rejection she knew she likely deserved. But before she could turn away, the door creaked open, and there stood Thomas. He looked older, more worn, but his gentle eyes remained unchanged. For a long moment, they stood in silence, each of them studying the other, remembering the weight of what lay between them. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thomas, I'm so sorry for everything." She faltered, her voice breaking as memories of her betrayal flooded back. "I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to fix, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know, I'm sorry, truly." Thomas listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took a slow breath, and the silence stretched between them. Lily braced herself for anger, for scorn, anything but what came next. "Lily," he began softly, "I spent years hating you, blaming you for everything I lost. But somewhere along the way, I realized that holding on to that hatred was only hurting me." He paused, the weight of his words settling over them. "I won't pretend that I can forget what happened, but I can choose to let it go." A sense of relief flooded through her, though she felt undeserving of his grace. "Thank you, Thomas," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful." Thomas nodded, his gaze softening. "I hope you find peace, Lily, and I hope you live a life that brings you happiness, the kind that doesn't depend on anything or anyone but yourself." With those words, he stepped back and gently closed the door, leaving Lily standing alone in the quiet of the fading afternoon. As she walked back to the village, Lily felt as if a burden had lifted from her shoulders. She would never be able to undo the pain she had caused. But in that moment, she felt something akin to forgiveness. For the first time, she understood that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about learning from it and moving forward with a heart that sought honesty and humility. The encounter with Thomas marked a turning point in her journey. She could feel the mask she had once worn, the mask of beauty, charm, and ambition, slipping away, replaced by a quiet resilience and a newfound desire to live a life of integrity. She knew it would be a long road, but she was ready. Lily finally felt free. With her newfound freedom, Lily dedicated herself fully to living an honest life. The years of deception, betrayal, and manipulation were now only shadows of her past, reminders of the lessons she'd learned through pain and loss. Every day, she worked hard, taking on small tasks for villagers who had slowly grown to accept her presence, if not fully forgive her. As time passed, Lily found solace in the simple pleasures of life, the morning sun filtering through her window, the laughter of children in the village square, the satisfaction of an honest day's work. She had no wealth, no titles, but she had gained something far more precious: peace of mind. One chilly autumn morning, Lily was working in the village garden when she noticed a young woman struggling to carry a heavy basket of firewood. Without hesitation, Lily walked over and offered her help. The woman, who introduced herself as Maria, was new to the village and had recently moved there with her husband and young son. As they talked, Lily found herself genuinely enjoying the company, feeling a rare warmth she hadn't felt in years. Maria soon became a regular visitor in Lily's life, bringing small gifts from her kitchen and sharing stories of her family. In turn, Lily found herself opening up, sharing fragments of her own life, though she carefully avoided the darker parts of her past. She didn't want to taint the new friendships she was building with remnants of who she once was. The two women's friendship blossomed, and through Maria, Lily met others in the community who saw her not as the scandalous woman from years ago, but as the kind-hearted soul she had become. Her heart grew lighter with each new connection, and for the first time, she felt a genuine sense of belonging. One afternoon, as she and Maria shared tea by the fireplace, Maria spoke softly, her words carrying a weight that Lily recognized instantly. "Lily, I know about your past. The villagers talk, as they always do." She paused, looking into Lily's eyes. "But to me, that isn't who you are." Lily felt her heart tighten, the old shame threatening to resurface, but she pushed it down, meeting Maria's gaze. "I'm not proud of the things I've done," she replied, her voice steady. "But I'm trying to make amends, in any way I can." Maria reached across the table, placing a gentle hand on Lily's. "You've already done more than you know. People can change, Lily, and you've changed for the better." In that moment, Lily felt a sense of acceptance she hadn't known was possible. She had spent so long punishing herself, feeling unworthy of kindness or forgiveness. But here was someone who saw her for who she was now, not who she had once been. As the days passed, her friendships within the village grew, and her quiet life became filled with moments of genuine happiness. She no longer felt the need to hide, nor did she feel ashamed of her past. Instead, she embraced each day with humility, grateful for the second chance she had been given. And so the tide turned. Lily was no longer defined by her past, but by her present, a woman redeemed, her heart open and free. As Lily settled into her new life, she thought she had finally escaped the shadow of her past. Her friendships with people like Maria brought her a kind of happiness that wealth had never provided, and the trust she rebuilt within the village strengthened her sense of purpose. However, the past has a way of resurfacing when we least expect it, and Lily was no exception. One cold winter evening, as Lily sat by the fire in her small cottage, a loud knock shattered the quiet of the night. She opened the door to find a stranger, a man cloaked in a dark coat, his face partially hidden by the shadows. His gaze was cold and his expression unfamiliar, yet something about him felt hauntingly familiar. "Lily Williams?" he asked, his voice rough. "Yes, that's me," she replied cautiously. He nodded, stepping into the light. "My name is Daniel Gray. I'm Edward Gray's younger brother." Lily's heart froze. She hadn't heard Edward's name in years, and the memories of her betrayal and the subsequent disgrace came flooding back. She had thought she'd left that chapter of her life behind, but here it was, knocking on her door. Daniel's expression was unreadable as he continued. "My brother passed away last year. He left a letter, and it was addressed to you. I came here to fulfill his last wish." Stunned, Lily took the letter from him, her hands trembling. She hadn't expected this. Daniel lingered a moment longer, his gaze filled with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. "He wanted you to read it. Perhaps he hoped it would bring you peace, though I can't say I understand why." With that, Daniel turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Lily standing alone, clutching the letter that held words from a man she had wronged so deeply. Back inside, her fingers fumbled as she tore open the envelope. Her heart raced as she unfolded the worn paper, Edward's familiar handwriting staring back at her. She braced herself, unsure of what awaited her in those words. "Lily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer bound to this world. I have spent many years hating you, much like you once hated the life we built together. But time has a way of softening even the hardest hearts. I've come to realize that perhaps we were both trapped in different ways. You, bound by dreams of a life I could never give you. Me, too proud to see the truth behind your smiles. I write this not to condemn you, but to forgive you, for I no longer carry the bitterness that once consumed me. We were both flawed, both responsible for the pain we inflicted on each other. So I leave you with these words, hoping you have found peace and perhaps a better path in life. Redemption is a difficult journey, Lily, but I hope you found yours. Goodbye. Edward's tears blurred her vision as she finished reading. The forgiveness she had never asked for, the understanding she hadn't earned, had finally come to her from the man she had wronged most deeply. It was as if a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying had suddenly lifted. In that moment, Lily understood the true price of her past actions. She had paid it in suffering, in loss, and in loneliness. And yet, somehow, life had given her a second chance, a chance to be forgiven, to be free, and to start anew. The letter stayed with her, a reminder of the heavy price she had paid, but also of the grace she had been given. It marked the final chapter of her painful journey, closing the door on the life she once knew and opening another to the life she had earned. In the weeks that followed, Lily carried Edward's letter with her everywhere, as if it were a fragile piece of the redemption she had spent years seeking. It had become her silent companion, a reminder of the forgiveness she never thought she would receive. Each morning, she read the letter, letting the words settle over her, filling her heart with both sorrow and solace. The villagers noticed a change in her. There was a lightness in her step, a softness in her smile that hadn't been there before. She no longer shied away from their gazes, no longer felt the need to hide or atone. Instead, she lived each day as if it were a gift granted by the very people she had once wronged and the man she had once betrayed. One chilly evening, as Lily walked through the village square, she spotted Maria and her young son, Samuel. The boy's laughter filled the air as he chased the falling autumn leaves, his joy infectious. Maria waved her over and Lily joined them, her heart swelling with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "Lily," Maria said, smiling gently, "Samuel's been asking for a story. Do you think you could tell him one?" Lily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. She knelt beside Samuel, her mind racing through memories of old stories, tales that had been told to her as a child. She began softly, weaving a story about a girl who, like herself, had made mistakes but had found redemption in the end. As she spoke, she saw Maria watching her, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. When the story ended, Samuel clapped, his innocent laughter filling the air. Lily's heart swelled with gratitude, a bittersweet reminder of what she had lost and gained along her journey. As dusk settled over the village, Maria walked beside her, their steps unhurried, the air between them filled with a comfortable silence. "You've come a long way, Lily," Maria said softly, breaking the quiet. Lily nodded, her gaze drifting toward the village where she had once felt so out of place. "I used to think that wealth and power were all that mattered," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I've learned that there's more value in kindness, in honesty, and in forgiveness." They stopped at the river's edge, where the water sparkled beneath the moonlight. This was the place where it had all begun, the place where she had first betrayed Thomas, setting in motion the chain of events that had led her here. Turning to Maria, Lily took a deep breath. "I used to wonder if I'd ever escape my past, if I'd ever be forgiven for the things I'd done. But now I know. Forgiveness isn't something that just comes. It's something you earn, piece by piece, through the life you choose to live." Maria's eyes shone with pride as she placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Then you've already found what you were looking for." As they stood together by the river, Lily felt a sense of peace that she had never known before. Her journey had been long, filled with shadows and sorrow, but it had led her to a life far richer than any wealth could offer. In the end, she had learned that true happiness wasn't found in riches or status, but in the love and forgiveness of others, and most importantly, in the forgiveness she had finally found for herself. The end.